Hey, what's up, comrades? Hope you're all doing well. So we're gonna start mixing it up every week. I got the first 33 volumes of Fairy Tale for Christmas, so I'm gonna start doing every other week Fairy Tale volume, and then an arc from the X-Men. So that's how things are gonna start rolling now. So we start with volume 1 of Fairy Tale, and I've never read the manga before. I've seen the anime a long time ago, and I played one of the games recently. But Fairy Tale is a shonen anime. It's got rad dudes and hot babes and cool and rad babes, to be honest, too. And it's very good. And it takes place in this world, Fioria, I think is what it's called, where there's lots and lots of very high magic, if you will. Lots of magic everywhere you go, everywhere you look. And there's lots of guilds, and the guilds are kind of the key component. Anyway, so the first volume starts off, and we're introduced to the Council of Wizards. And the Council of Wizards is like the governing body over all the guilds, at least all the good guilds. We later learn there's like evil guilds, but they kind of keep track of what's going on and kind of mediate between the guilds and whatnot. And there's this guy, Altair, who's playing around with a ball and fucking around. And one of the old men is like, you young people, Altair, you need to take things seriously. Something about Fairy Tale. They're always causing problems, whatnot. And then Altair's like, hey, old man, what's his name? Sigrin Sama, you need to chill out. They just make life exciting. We then head off to a train that's traveling, and we find ourselves with Natsu and Happy. Happy is like a blue cat-like creature. Now, in the manga, we don't necessarily know the color. We do because of the cover, but it's all black and white, right? And then Natsu, who's later referred to as a pink-haired guy, he's laying there looking like sick as shit. And we find out that he has like a motion sickness when it comes to anything he rides in that has motion. He just like cannot function about any of that. Anyway, the manga sets the tone for the manga pretty quick here, as we get Happy is like, all right, let's go, Natsu. We're going to this town to look for this guy Salamander that we are interested in figuring out something about, and the rumor we heard. And so Happy gets out, and then Natsu's so sick he doesn't follow Happy, so he gets stuck on the train, and he's like, no! And so he keeps going and has to double back a couple trains. Anyway, at this point we switch over to best girl Lucy, who is not a member of a guild, but she is a wizard, and she's looking through this magic shop, talking to the magic guy about stuff, and she sees a key that she clearly wants, and she's like, how much for this? And he's like, 20,000 jewels. And she's like, what? And then she like bends over and is like, oh yeah, is it 20,000 jewels for me? And then we see her afterwards like stomping around being like, 1,000 jewels off, that's all my sexual, that's all I'm worth. Anyway, while she's stomping around being mad, she sees all these girls run into this guy who's called Salamander, and he's a wizard. And so she's like, what's this all about? So she kind of meanders over there, and then she falls under what at first she's like, what is this all about? And she seems kind of skeptical, but then she's like, I think I'm in love with this guy. What's going on? And at that point, right when she seems kind of captivated, Natsu rolls in. He's like, Salamander! And he's like, wait a second, you're not Salamander. Who the fuck are you? Whatever. And he starts wandering off. And all these girls are like mad that he's not treating this handsome wizard who's beguiling all of them with like reverence and whatnot. And so they go back and forth a little bit, and then Natsu like wanders off. And then after all the ladies and the Salamander guy kind of meander out of there, Lucy walks up to him and she's like, hey, thank you so much. I was under a charm spell. I didn't realize that until you broke in there and kind of like helped me figure it out. So I owe you one. And so she takes them out to eat lunch, and they're eating like gross, like they're just like shoving their face, Happy and Natsu are shoving their face full of food and she's making a big mess. And she makes a comment. She's like, oh man, I'm getting food on my face. Like, you guys need to slow it down. You're getting food on me. I just had a makeover. Anyway, so then she starts talking to him about wizards and wizard guilds and stuff, because she thinks Natsu and Happy are just like regular old Joes. And because she makes some comment, and Natsu's like, what? And she's like, oh, these guilds. There's guilds all over the country, and that's a place where wizards gather to work together, to solve quests, and to build up, and to be happy and do all this stuff. And I want to join a guild someday. And I'm not like a real wizard yet, because you're not really considered a real wizard till you join a guild. Anyway, she's like, all right, guys, thanks so much for your help. Bye. And they're like, no, we owe you some. And she's like, you don't owe me. I bought you the meal. Like, I owed you for breaking that thing. And they're like, no, we owe you for feeding us. And she's like, okay, cool, whatever. Also at the same time, we learn about a dragon named Ignil that has some sort of relationship with Natsu, but she's like, a dragon, get out of here. That doesn't make any sense. So later on, Lucy's just sitting at like a park bench reading Sorcerer Weekly, which is a magazine that just highlights the different guild members and stuff. And then at this point, you get introduced to Mira Jane, who is this beautiful fairy tale wizardess. She's like the not the spokesman, she's like the mascot, if you will, of like the guild. And she's always like in these pinups in this magazine being sexy, and she's like in a swimsuit in this one. And she's like, oh, Mary Jane, you're so beautiful. Anyway, so Salamander is like creeping up on her from like the woods, and she's like, what do you want? And she's like, no, you're trying to charm me, you're charming this woman, you're a creep, stay away from me. And he's like, no, but you're so special and something. And she starts running away, and he starts chasing after her. And he's like, wait, I did you say something about the Fairy Tale Guild? I'm a member of Fairy Tale. I can get you there. And then Lucy's like, what? You can? And she's like, oh, he's super creepy, but I really want to be in Fairy Tale, so I guess it's worth it. And she's like, all right, so what do you want me to do? And he's like, I'm having a party on my yacht. You and all these beautiful women, I want you to come. And she's like, I don't know about that. And he's like, if you come, I'll help you get into Fairy Tale. And she's like, fuck it, fine, let's do it. And so, meanwhile, Natsu and Happy, who are full of food and super happy, are kind of just like wandering around, being content with life. And then Natsu hears some of these pretty women talking about the Salamander guy having a party and all this stuff. And he kind of doesn't care until Salamander says something about like Fairy Tale. And he's like, what? Fairy Tale? And he gets like very concerned about that. So later on at the party, Lucy is in like a very, very sexy dress, and she's all alone with Salamander, where like most of the girls are like out and about on the ship. And she's like, so why am I here all by myself? And he's like, oh, you're very special and whatever. And he tries to like, he casts a spell where he gets some of like this wine to go up into her mouth, and she like bats it away. And she's like, that's a sedative wine. I know what you're doing. You're a big fucking creep. Like, what's going on here? I expected more of like Fairy Tale Guild and all this stuff. And then she gets grabbed because there's a bunch of dudes like hiding right behind where she was at. And they reveal that they're slavers, that they're going to kidnap all these women in some of the slavery, and that she's going to be worth a lot, right? Because she's like extra sexy or something, and she's got magic powers or whatever. Anyway, at this point, Salamander grabs these keys that she has on her hip this whole time, and he's like, oh, a celestial wizard. And the goons are like, what's a celestial wizard? And it's like, oh, so they use keys to summon like beings from like another realm to do their bidding and whatnot. And he takes the keys and just tosses them out the window. And the Lucy starts freaking out because they're like, oh, you're not gonna be so easy to charm and seduce to be a slave, so we're gonna have to take care of that, hinting at they're gonna like rape her and stuff. And then he pulls out a brand and he's like, first we're gonna brand you, and then we'll take care of you and make you more willing and compliant. And at that point, who shows up? Natsu! He crashes through the roof of the ship. And Lucy's like, wow, that was so cool. And then Natsu's like curled up in the corner being sick, because he's seasick. And she's like, that's not cool at all. And then Happy flies in with wings. Apparently he's got wings. And he's like, come on, Lucy, let's go. And Lucy grabs onto him and she flies him out. And then Salamander casts some fire magic up through the hole, and they dodge that. And then the goons start firing bullets up at him, and they're like, oh no, move away. And then Lucy's like, wow, I didn't know you had wings. And he's like, no, I got transformation magic, but it's almost out. And she's like, what? And then his wings go away, and they both crash into the water. And while they're down there, Lucy's like, oh my gosh, I gotta go save those girls and help them. And so she notices her keys are laying about, so she's like, I got it. So she swims over and grabs her keys, and her and Happy pop out, and then she summons Aquarius, one of her minions, like her summoning creatures. And then Aquarius is a real bitch. She's like, I can't believe you dropped my keys. What do you want? I don't feel like helping you. You're an asshole. And Lucy's like, come on, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to drop him. I won't do it again. And then Aquarius is like, I have a date with my boyfriend. I don't have time for this. And Lucy's like, I just need you to blast that ship into the harbor. And then there's like, Aquarius causes this giant wave, and it drags the ship, and it drags Lucy and Happy, and everyone just like crashes into the harbor. And then Lucy's like, why did you throw me too? Why'd you drag me over there too? And Aquarius is like, what do you mean? That was my point. I was trying to drag you to the harbor. The boat was just like incidental stuff. And then Lucy's like, what? And then Aquarius is like, don't summon me for a week. I'm out with my boyfriend. And Lucy's like, God, why are you such a bitch? And then she leaves. Meanwhile, on the ship, all these guys are like, the fuck just happened? And then Natsu's like, wait a second, we're not moving anymore. All right, let's do this. And Lucy and Happy at this point have run onto the ship. And Lucy's like, let me help you, you poor young boy who just crashed in here and something. And then Happy's like, no, let him be. And she's like, what do you mean? It's like, he's a wizard too. And then Natsu like rips off his jacket, and he's got the Fairy Tale tattoo or whatever on his shoulder. And she's like, what? And then Natsu's like, grabs Salamander. He's like, you don't look like anyone I recognize. And I'm from Fairy Tale. And so then they're about to fight, but the salamander guy casts like some giant fire spell, and Natsu and Lucy's like, hold up, and then Happy again is like, no. And then all these guys are like laughing, all the goons, and then all of a sudden all the fire starts going away, and we see Natsu eating it. And at this point we get explained from Happy to Lucy that Natsu is he's a dragon slayer, and that his whole thing is fire, so he eats fire to use it as fuel to power his magic, and that he was specifically trained by a dragon on how to kill dragons. And Lucy's like, wait, that don't make no sense. Why would a dragon treat him how to kill dragons? And Happy's like, shh, don't worry about it. So at that point, Natsu just destroys these guys and destroys the ship, and he's kind of running amok. And Lucy's like, we got to stop him. He's causing way too much damage. And then after that, the town guards show up, and they're like, what's happening? And Natsu's like, whoop, time to go. And he grabs Lucy and starts running. She's like, what are you doing? Why are you dragging me off? And he's like, don't you want to be a member of Fairy Tail? And she's like, oh yeah, I do. And so then they run off together like, tee hee hee hee. Oh, goodness. Anyway, so then at the end of the first chapter, we head back to the council room, and then the members are complaining about the destruction of the harbor and all this stuff, and then Rolterra's kind of laughing or whatever. It's like, what's your deal? And he's like, I love it. I love Fairy Tail. They make life so much more entertaining. And that's the end of chapter 1. Chapter 2 starts with Natsu and Lucy standing out front of Fairy Tail, and Natsu's like, behold, Fairy Tail! We then head inside, and we see Mary Jane. She's serving drinks to everybody. People are flirting with her. She's, teasing them back and all this stuff. And then Natsu kicks open the door, and he runs, and he's like, it's me, Natsu, and Happy. We're back! And then Mary Jane's like, oh, welcome back, you two. And then Natsu does like a jump kick at this guy. And he's like, hey, motherfucker, you gave me that false rumor that Salamander was in this town. Fuck you. And then they start fighting. And then like everyone starts fighting. And Lucy walks in and she's like, what is happening? And then Gray shows up. And Gray's an important character. But he's a guy, all we know right now is that this guy just runs around in his underwear. And she's like, oh my gosh, why are you in your underwear? And later on, he gets his underwear stripped. And he's like, give me your underwear to Lucy. And she's like, no! Anyway, so Gray and Natsu are like huge rivals, so they start fighting. And then this guy Elfman, who we get his name later, but he jumps in to like stop them from fighting. And they both like knock him out so they can keep fighting. And then Lucy's like laying there being freaked out, where everyone's like fighting. It's not just them; it's like the whole guild is like fighting. And there's Kara, who's like drinking like a whole keg of like ale, and she starts fighting. And then there's like Loki, who's super handsome and hot, and he's like rated one of the hottest like future boyfriends by like the Weekly Magazine out of all like the wizards in the land. And then finally Mary Jane walks up to Lucy and she's like, oh hey, how's it going? You're new here. And she's like, what is going on? This is insane. It's like, no, this is great. This is this is just how it is here. And then Mary Jane gets hit in the head with like a bottle, and she collapses immediately, like in the middle of her sentence. And Lucy's like, ah! And then Mary Jane sits back up, and she's like, this is just fun. We're just having a good time. And she's like got blood running down one side of her face. And then all the wizards like Elfman and Kara and Loki and Gray and Natsu they're about to start casting magic, and that's when Makarov shows up, and he's the guild master, and he shows up as like a giant shadowy monster, and he's like, stop, all of you will stop, and they all stop, and then Natsu's like, haha, that means I win, and then Makarov like stamps on him. And he's like, oh, hello, you must be new. To Lucy, and Lucy's just like freaking out. And then so the giant shadow monster shrinks back down to like the old man, and he's like, hey, nice to meet you, and he like shakes her hand. I'm Makarov, the head of the guild. And then he does this backflip up onto the balcony and like fucks that up. But then he's like, I had this letter from the council, and he starts chewing everybody out. He's like, Gray, you were naked and then you stole underwear from somebody. Elfman, you were supposed to guard a guy and then you fought him. And Elfman's like, well, you said being manly was knowing stuff. And he's like, Kora, you drank all this stuff and then charged it to the council. And then Natsu, and then Loki, you had sex with like the councilman's like daughter, and then something else. And then Natsu, you destroyed this and this and this and this, and then you destroyed that and that. And then Lucy's like, damn, all that stuff you hear about in the magazine, that was all Natsu. Golly, he's a wrecking ball. And then he's like, but you know what? Magic is awesome, and we got to enjoy ourselves, and it is what it is. So he sets it on fire. He's like, fuck the council. And everyone's like, yay! And Lucy's like, oh, I love this place. So after that, everything's like back to normal. Lucy runs up to Natsu and she's like, "Look, I got a stamp," and it's a stamp on her hand for the guild. She's like, "I'm in Fairy Tale now," and Natsu's like, "Good job, Luigi," while he's like eating his food, and she's like, "Why?" And then Natsu's like, I need to make money," so he goes and starts looking at the guild board. Lucy goes and just hangs out at the bar with Mira Jane and starts chatting with her. So Natsu's like, "All right, this sounds like a good quest. It's like stamp out some thieves and get like a bunch of jewels, which are like the money of this world." And then this little boy runs in and starts yelling at Makarov, and "Where's my daddy?" And then it's like, "Oh, Macau, he went to the mountains of something to go fight, to complete a quest." And but no one's seen him in like 3 days. And you need to help my daddy. You need to go and get him. And I'm all by myself. And then Makarov's like, "Go home. You need to figure like he'll be fine. He's a member of Fairy Tale and a wizard. He'll be fine." And then the boy like cries and runs off. And then Natsu gets like really mad and he slams like the guild request or the quest request back onto the board and storms off. And Lucy's like, "Hey, what's going on with that guy?" And the Mary Jane's like, "Oh, it just reminds him of when he was a kid. Like he was abandoned by his father, and so I think he's just really upset about the whole situation." And she's like, "What do you mean?" And it's like, "Well, so Natsu never knew his parents, but he was found by like the Red Dragon, Ignis." And she's like, "What? Like really was raised by a dragon?" And she's like, "Yeah." And he raised him, and we get all these like cute pictures of him like hanging out, having a good time. And then one day, Ignis just like disappeared, and he was able to find him, and he's never seen him since. And so this boy missing his dad means a lot to Natsu. And then we see Natsu like walking with his bag, headed towards like this mountains, past the boy. He doesn't say anything though. Anyway, so before we leave the Fairy Tale Guild, Mara Jane also says some like really cryptic shit about like everyone's under a cloud and how there's a lot of pain, suffering, and stuff. And Lucy's like, "Nani desu ka?" And Mara Jane's like, "Just kidding." Okay, so there's there's something dark going on. Anyway, a short time later, Lucy's riding in the back of a carriage with Natsu, who's like shaking from like his stomach illness of hating like his seasickness or whatever. And Happy is like, "Why are you here?" And she's like, "I wanted to come help because I had nothing else to do." And he's like, "Okay, well, when we get back, you can come live with us." And she's like, "No, I'm gonna find my own place to live. I'm not gonna live with you creeps." Anyway, then the driver of the carriage is like, "We can't go any further." And Natsu and Lucy hop out, and there's in the middle of a giant blizzard. And Natsu's like, "It's summer. This shouldn't be this way." And then Lucy's like, "I'm freezing cold. This is awful." And he's like, "Well, it's because you wore thin clothes. You should have wore something warmer." And she's like, "What about you?" Because Natsu's literally just wearing like a vest, like an open vest. And then the guy with the carriage is like riding away. And he's like, "All right, good luck. Bye." And Lucy's like, "No, what about me?" And then Lucy asks like, "What's going on? Why is this guy come out here?" And it's like who's sent on a quest to kill some macaws, or no, his name's Macau, to kill some volcanoes or something like that. And then Lucy like summons this giant clock, like this giant grandfather clock, and then hops inside to stay warm. And then now she speaks through it, and so they have a short conversation. Then one of these monsters like shows up, grabs the clock, and says something to Natsu. Natsu's like, "Holy cow, you can speak?" And then it runs off with Lucy, and she's like, "Help me, help me!" And Natsu's like, "All right, let's do this." And this ends chapter 2. Turns out the volcano is a big pervert who just wants to fuck Lucy. That it hates men and that it loves women. And Lucy's like, "Thank goodness I'm inside my giant clock." And then poof, I guess time runs out because it's got to go back to its like astral realm or whatever. And Lucy's like, "Oh." At this point, Natsu and Happy show up. They followed the Vulcan all the way to the edge of the cave, and it's like, "Hey, I need to talk to you. We're looking for Macau. Have you seen Macau?" And then the Vulcan's kind of dismissive, and then at some point it like points to like the edge of the cave, and so Natsu heads over to the edge of the cave, and the Vulcan just like kicks him out. And he falls all the way down the mountain and crashes in the ground. And Lucy's like, "Ah!" Like, what? He's okay. I'm sure he's okay. He's fine. But now I'm in trouble. What am I going to do? And so she summons Taurus, which is another one of her celestial spirits, who is also a big pervert, and calls her my udders. And compliments her udders. And she's like, "I forgot." Good stuff. They're about to fight, the Vulcan and Taurus, when Natsu comes back in, and she's like, "What?" And he's like, "Happy flew me up here." And he's like, "Oh, another monster." So then he clobbers Taurus, who sends his axe like flying. And then Lucy's like, "No, what are you doing?" And so then the Vulcan uses like ice magic or something to attack Natsu, who is like, aha, I'm all about fire. None of that can hurt me whatsoever. And then the Vulcan picks up Taurus's axe, and Natsu's like, oh, that actually hurt. So he dodges an attack and then grabs the axe blade as it's coming down on him. And then he melts a bit of it and then swallows the melted part and does like a super attack. It's like named. I can't remember what it's named, but it's got like a named attack, and it slams the Vulcan against the wall, the back wall. And then we see that the Vulcan is actually Macau. He was transformed to a Vulcan. And he got hit into the wall so hard that he's now falling through the wall out of the cliff and down to his death. And so Natsu's like, no! And so he runs and grabs him, but then he's starting to fall, and then Happy grabs them, but his like wing power is about to expire, and so Lucy grabs Happy's tail, but she's not strong enough to lift like all three of them out of the ground, and it's like things look pretty dire for a minute before dun. Taurus! That's right, Taurus is still around. So he grabs, and he's like, I got it, don't worry. And Lucy's like, oh, thank goodness you saved my life. After that, Macau is pretty beaten up because Natsu kicked the shit out of him, and he's got this big like gaping wound that's bleeding everywhere and whatever, and so Lucy's like, I don't think this medkit's going to do anything to help this guy. And Natsu's like, he can't die. He's got to go back for Romeo, who's the name of his son. And so he uses fire to cauterize the wound, and they bandage him up, and he's okay. Macau apologizes. He said, sorry, I took this quest to beat 20 Vulcans, and I only was able to beat 19, and that one possessed my body. And Lucy's like, what the fuck? He took on a quest and beat 20 monsters by himself? She's like, I am very underpowered. I need to get my act together. Meanwhile, back in the town, Romeo, who is Macau's son again, he's thinking about how he sent his dad on this quest, and because he told his dad that he needed to do like a really tough quest because he was getting bullied at school. Like all these kids were like, "Oh, wizards are lame. Your dad's lame. Wizards are so lame. Fairy tales the worst. All they do is drink." And so he's like, "Dad, you have to prove them wrong. You have to do a super big quest." And he's like, "I'll do it." And at this point, he looks up and sees his dad being who's like conscious, and he's being carried, not carried completely, but like Macau's got his armor on, Natsu's helping him walk, and he runs up and he apologizes. His dad's like, nah, it's fine. You tell those motherfuckers next time they harass you that your dad defeated 19 monsters and they can go fuck themselves. And then Natsu, Happy, and Lucy move on their way, and Romeo thanks them. And Lucy's like, man, I'm going to have so much fun being in this guild. We then learn a bit about Fiore, which is the world that this, or at least the continent that this story takes place in, and how Magnolia, the town they're in, where Fairy Tale's in, is it's like on the eastern seaboard, and then it's a center of trade, and that they've been using magic for a long time. We then catch Lucy in her bath, in her new pad. Nice. Very good. And then she's thinking out loud about how she loves her place. It's got like a stove in the kitchen, which I guess it's medieval time, so yeah, that's a bigger deal than you think. It's got a tub, it's got this, it's got that. And then she's like, and my bedroom, ah! Because when she walks in her bedroom, there's Natsu and Happy like eating like the crazy monsters that they are when they eat, like just disgusting. And she kicks Natsu and screams at them, and then like, what are you doing here? You can't just like walk into like someone's house. This is called breaking and entering, all this stuff. And Natsu's like, no, we wanted to come see your new place, something. How'd you even know I was living here? Oh, Mira Jane told us, blah, blah, blah. And then finally we skip ahead a little bit, and Lucy's dressed. And she's sitting at the table, and she's like, drink this tea and get the fuck out. And Natsu's like, come on, we just want to hang out. And we learn more about this celestial spirit thing, And she's like, oh, yeah? And he's like, yeah. And so she like lays down, she has 6 keys, right? And so she lays down the keys, and she's like, these are 6 silver keys. And these keys you can just buy in like shops, the silver type keys. And so you summon these creatures like the clock is one of those. And then these gold keys, those are more special. You have to make like they're bigger, more powerful contracts or whatever. And that includes Aquarius and Taurus and the crab guy, Cancer. And then she's like, oh, yeah, and I bought that key. So I guess she bought that key. She got like the $1,000 or 1,000 jewels off at the other town. She bought the key for Nikita or something. Did I write it down? I did not. Anyway, she's like, oh, so you guys can see I make a contract with a celestial being. And they're like, all right, that sounds awesome. That Taurus guy saved my life. I love celestial beings. And so she summons, and it's like this cute little like creature with like a weird drill nose. And Natsu and Happy are like, hey, Lucy, I think you failed your magic save throw or whatever. And she's like, no, this is what it's supposed to look like. He's so cute. Time to make the contract. And she literally like pulls out a calendar, and it's like, are Tuesdays good for you? And he's like, yes. How about Mondays? No. And they're like, what? That's all it is? You're just agreeing on like times to be summoned. And she's like, it's a very serious matter. And wizards who use celestial spirits will always keep their word. And the Natsu's like, hey, so the reason we came over here besides to see your place, was that we want to invite you to be a team. You see, Fairy Tale is a big team, and we all work together, but then we have we break off into smaller teams so that we can do certain quests and we can help each other out. And she's like, you want me to be in your team with you? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, oh, wow, that'd be awesome. Yeah, I'd love that. And they're like, all right. He's like, we even got a quest going for you. And he gives it to her, and it shows this pervy looking dude, and it's like, hey, I need to get a book from this guy. He's a super pervert. He's really abrasive to women, and he's looking for a blonde maid. And Lucy's like, wait a second. The only reason you invited me to be part of your group is because I'm blonde. And they're like, tee-hee, you already agreed to it. You can't back out now. And so she freaks out. And then we go back to the guild. Well, there's Makarov's just chilling, smoking, and Mary Jane's cleaning up. And there's this team there. And they're looking and oh, man, looks like somebody took that quest for the book. And Makarov, I think it's Makarov, or is Mary Jane? We're like, oh yeah, Natsu came and got it a little bit ago, and he went to go get Lucy to help him out. And they're like, rats. And Makarov's like, you'd probably be grateful you're not going to go take care of this thing. And they're like, oh yeah? And it's like, yeah, I just got a call from the guildmaster, the guy who requested the quest. And Mary Jane's like, oh no, did he want to get rid of the quest? And he's like, no, he raised it from 200,000 jewels to 2 million jewels. And they're like, wow! And then we get a shot of Gray just chilling, smoking as well, and being like, I'm very interested in all this shenanigans that are going on now. Back with Natsu, Happy, and Lucy, they're taking a cart or whatever, a little wagon, out to this quest to get this book from this guy. Oh, and before we left them, they were like, oh, you got to practice being a maid. Start calling Happy your master, and yada yada. And she's freaking out, and they're teasing her. And then now Natsu's laying on the ground freaking out or having his sickness, and she's like, oh, master, do you need me to come comfort you? And he's like, it's not funny. And so she got him. Oh, good stuff. That's the end of the first volume. There is an interlude story, which is just a short one with Happy being like, hey, so I'm Happy. I'm a cat who can cast a spell that gives me wings sometimes. And one day I was at the guild, and I saw this quest to catch a flying fish. And if you catch the flying fish, then I'll pay you 30,000 jewels, and also you get to come and eat it with me. And I was like, that's awesome. So Natsu and I went, and then Lucy tagged along, and Lucy's looking fun as usual in a swimsuit kind of situation, a sexy bikini and just a short skirt. And then they're like, why are you coming? And she's like, I just want to hang out. Leave me alone. And so and she's like, I want to see the flying fish. They're so pretty. And then they're not pretty because she's like, why do you want to eat flying fish anyway? And they show up, and it's because if you don't bite them, they'll bite you. And they're all attacking Lucy and pulling off her clothes and stuff. And so then they go up on a cliff above the flying fish, and they're hiding out. And Lucy brought a book, and she's like, I'm going to read while you try to catch these fish. And Natsu's going to take a nap. And then Happy's like, all right, I got this, no problems. And he makes one attempt to catch them. He's like, I can't do this, it's impossible, I give up. And Lucy's like, no, man, you got to do it. You just got to be patient and do your best, and I believe in you. And then Happy's like, Natsu, Lucy's bullying me. Anyway, he eventually goes back and catches a whole bunch of fish, and then they head over to the guy, turn him in, and they're eating their fish feast. And Lucy's like, this fish is disgusting. It is the worst thing I've ever had in my entire life. And Natsu's like, I think it tastes great. And she's like, because you're not eating the fish. And then Happy he's like, I like the fish, and he's chewing on it, and then he spits it all out. And she's like, you don't even like the fish. Why'd we take this quest? And that's the end. So go ahead, share, comment, subscribe, and I will catch you all later. Bye.